Welcome to the Tobacco Online Policy Seminar, TOPS. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Eliza Zitnick, an MS student in Health Policy and Management at UMass Amherst. TOPS is organized by Mike Pesco at University of Missouri, C. Shang at The Ohio State University, Michael Darden at Johns Hopkins University, and Jamie Hartman-Boyce at University of Massachusetts Amherst. The seminar will be 1 hour with questions from the moderator and discussant. The audience may pose questions and comments in the Q&A panel, and the moderator will draw from these questions and comments in conversation with the presenter. Please review the guidelines on tobaccopolicy.org for acceptable questions. Please keep the questions professional and related to the research being discussed. Questions that meet the seminar series guidelines will be shared with the presenter afterwards, even if they are not read aloud. Your questions are very much appreciated. This presentation is being video recorded and will be made available along with presentation slides on the TOPS website, tobaccopolicy.org. I will turn the presentation over to today's moderator, Jamie Hartman-Boyce from University of Massachusetts Amherst, to introduce our speaker.
Thanks so much, Eliza. Today, we conclude our winter-spring 2024 season with a single paper presentation by Guillermo Paraje entitled The Impact of the World Health Organization Framework Convention for Tobacco on the Number of Smokers, an analysis using interrupted time series analysis with synthetic control groups. This presentation was selected via a competitive review process by submission through the TOPS website. Dr. Guillermo Paraje is a full professor of economics at the Universidad Adolfo Ibáñez Business School in Chile. He specializes in health economics topics such as health equity, health systems, and non-communicable diseases. Relating to non-communicable diseases, he has developed policy-oriented research to implement effective tobacco, alcohol, and sugar-sweetened beverage control policies in Latin American countries. He's been a consultant for the World Bank, the World Health Organization, the United Nations Development Program, and UNICEF, among other organizations. In 2018, he was distinguished by the World Health Organization with the No Tobacco Day Award in the Americas for his contribution to the economics of tobacco control. He is the director of the Regional Tax Hub for Tobacco Taxes, Tabaconomia, of the Bloomberg Initiatives to Reduce Tobacco Use. Guillermo received his bachelor's in economics from the University of Cordoba in Argentina and a master's and doctorate in economics from the University of Cambridge in the United Kingdom. Luca Pruzzo and Mauricio Flores Munoz, economists at Universidad Adolfo Ibáñez, are co-authors of the studies and will answer select questions in the Q&A. Our discussant today is Dr. Shannon Gravely, Research Assistant Professor at the University of Waterloo and co-chair of the SRNT Policy Research Network. Dr. Guillermo Paraje, thank you for presenting for us today.
Thank you very much for the possibility of presenting this initial research. It's not still a full paper, it's being developed. It's a research that has been co-authored by Mauricio Flores, Ignacio Finot, Luca Pruzzo from here, Universidad Adolfo Ibáñez, and Daphne Wu and Prabhat Jha from the University of Toronto. This is our acknowledge of funding and our declaration of conflict of interest. We have no conflict of interest of any kind. And as I said before, this research has not yet been published, not even submitted. So please consider it as an ongoing research. This study basically follows a few other efforts to measure the effect of FCTC on different smoking outcomes. There are a few papers that have tried that with different measures and different methods, I would say. One is by Shannon, published in 2017. Basically, and she can correct me if I'm wrong, they studied the change in the number of FCTC measures adopted after implementation, but between 2007 and 2014, so some countries had already ratified FCTC, and the association with the change in the prevalence between 2005 and 2015. The results they find is that an increase in the number of implemented measures is significantly associated with a decrease in smoking prevalence. Now, as a limitation, I would say that they don't use control groups, so the results cannot be directly attributed to FCTC. It's an association, and they say it. The studies somehow measure the FCTC, the different FCTC measures or the different empower measures, but not the treaty itself, not the effect that ratifying itself had. And the study does not consider the implementation of these measures pre-FCTC ratification for some countries, those that ratified at least before 2007. The other thing is that it's hard for them to measure the intensity of these measures and the effect that how much, for instance, taxes affected the evolution of the prevalence. Similarly, Anderson and colleagues in 2016 studied the trends of policy percentage using scores between 2007 and 2014, and the association with prevalence between 2010 and 2015. They built a score for the amount of measures and the difference in measures that countries adopted, and they find that higher policy scores are associated with a decrease in prevalence. Again, they don't use any control group, so they cannot directly attribute the results to FCTC. Similarly, Dubray et al. In 2014 studied the relationship between 2008 Empower Composite Score and the change in smoking prevalence between 2006 and 2009. Again, some countries have not ratified by 2009, and some others ratified before 2008 or after 2008. So it's hard to associate the results they find to FCTC, but they show that higher Empower scores are related to a larger decrease in smoking prevalence. Finally, Hoffman and colleagues in 2019 assessed the effect of no, it's not final, there is one more. Assessed the effect of FCTC using ITSA, single group ITSA, and the outcome variable for them is the per capita cigarette consumption. Unlike the other three papers, they find no effect of FCTC adoption on the smoking outcome. To us, the study has some important and relevant limitations. First, the intervention year they use is 2003. Most countries ratified in 2005 and 2006. They use around 70 countries in a heavily unbalanced set of countries. And the composition for each year, in terms of number of countries, 4 countries is different. So some big countries appear and disappear during this time, which may bias the results. Second, they use the first difference of the per capita cigarette consumption as the dependent variable. And again, this is an absolute change in this variable, not a relative change, and that also may affect the results. Third, the dependent variable, which is the per capita cigarette consumption, does not consider total consumption, but registered consumption. So illicit trade, or the evolution of illicit trade, which is more important, and it may be an endogenous variable related to the policy change, is not considered. And fourth, they use a pre-ratification period which is too long, according to us, since 1970 to 2003 is the pre-ratification or the pre-FCTC period according to their analysis, and that period is for us extremely long and may bias the pre-intervention trend at least. When, and we did the exercise, we relax some of these conditions, contrary, using exactly the same data they use, we find that the FCTC had an effect on per capita cigarette consumption. So basically, when we relax some and try to overcome some of these limitations, or I would say, yeah, some of them, we find a positive effect of FCTC on per capita cigarette consumption. And of course, we can share those results. Finally, a paper we published recently used the log of smokers, the log of the prevalence of smokers for the 10-24 age group, and the log of the quit ratio for the 45-59 group. We use 117 countries that ratified. We exclude China. We analyzed China, but we decided to exclude it because it has very odd behavior in terms of either prevalence or the quit ratio, and we used a single group interrupted time series analysis. What we did is that each country ratification year is considered, so we don't take as the ratification, a single ratification date. We don't take 2003 or 2005, which is arbitrary for some countries, but we take the ratification year. For us, the ratification year is a 0 year, and for each country, we go back 10 years, and after ratification 10 years, and we measure the effect of FCTC. We found a strong effect, especially in post-intervention trends of FCTC, and we found that the cumulative reduction of young smoker after 10 years of ratification was about 24 million smokers when compared to the pre-ratification trend, which was anyway decreasing. Limitations, we don't use any control group, so the results again cannot be directly attributed to FCTC, and we use GBD data, which is modeled. Again, when you use this ironed series, ITSA may not behave very well. We did the analysis with countries, about 40 countries, I believe, that had a very high frequency of surveys. So that's our high quality data set, and we found exactly the same. So we believe that this issue of model data is not as important as it could be. And also the evolution of the prevalence is not like stock prices, is quite parsimonious. So we believe that it's not a very strong limitation, but anyway, it is a limitation. So what we do in this paper is basically extend the work conducted in the previous paper by using a synthetic control group with the ITSA. So we can somehow attribute, we believe we can attribute causality of the ratification of FCTC in these countries. And we conduct a bit more granular results by analyzing the effect by sex and by country's income, for both for the group, the age groups of 10-24 and for the 25 and more population. Again, we use GBD data. That data is from 1990 to 2020. This is a modeled data with the limitations we mentioned before. The countries that don't have 10 years after ratification, so we, for instance, if a country ratified in 2014, like El Salvador, we cannot observe 10 years after ratification, so we discard that country. By doing that, we eliminate basically, I think, 10 countries but we work with countries that represent about 96% of the total smoking population in the world. So the countries that we use are those that ratified between 2005 and 2010, because 2010 is the last last ratification year that allows us to observe 10 years after ratification. So we use, as I mentioned, interrupted time series analysis with synthetic control group. We consider a dynamic intervention point, which is the year of ratification for each country. So basically what we do is the year of ratification of each country for us is year 0. The year after, immediately after ratification is +1, +2, etc., 10 years. And backward, we take 15 years. So we kind of realign all the countries, each country with its year 0. And then, of course, we collapse it and observe one single series because we use ITSA. So basically, we estimate the difference between the treatment and the control group after 10 years of ratification. And we use quadratic or linear effect of treatment after ratification according to the results we get from the Acaike criterion. I will explain that a bit more. To construct the synthetic control group, which I would say is the core of the paper, we use LASSO. We use a paper by Hollingsworth and Wang, I think, that was published in 2018. The donor pool are never ratifying countries, very few. That is the list of countries. And because we have in our treatment countries that ratified at different periods, at different years, we construct a synthetic control group for each group of countries according to the ratifying year. So for instance, for countries that ratified in 2005, we construct a synthetic control group. For countries that are using this set of countries. For countries that ratified in 2006, we construct another synthetic control group. For countries ratifying in 2007, another synthetic control group. So each ratifying year or each set of countries ratifying in each year or in different years have a different synthetic control group. So basically, we have, in this case, two groups of countries, those that ratified in 2005, and the evolution of the treatment is shown in the squares, dots, square points. On the left, these countries ratified in 2005 have their own synthetic control group. Countries that ratified in 2006 have a different synthetic control group. Then, because we kind of use as the year 0, the ratifying year, we are able to put together both the treatment, each treatment and each synthetic control group, and collapse it in that way. So basically, we decided to use this Hollingsworth and Wing 2020 is the paper method, because it allows us to, because we have very few donor, a very small donor pool. This method allows us to consider negative weights to construct this synthetic control group. So basically, the weights do not have to add up to 1, and it's more flexible and gives a much better results of sample. And in this case, again, because we have a very, very small set of countries in the donor pool, the method provides better results than the usual method proposed by Abadi et al. In 2010, which is the one that is usually used with interrupted time series. An example of weights that we obtained, this is for the population 25 and plus for countries ratifying in 2010. As you can see, some of these weights are negative, some are positive. This is for the pre-intervention period, of course. You can see that, for instance, Monaco has a weight of 53, but Monaco has a very tiny population of smokers, whereas Argentina has 0.13, but probably has a population of smokers that is 100, 200 times larger than Monaco. So the absolute value of the weight should be considered with care. But what is somehow worth looking at are these countries that do have negative weights, and that allows to provide a better synthetic control group than the other method that has to have positive weights and has to have, or at least non-negative weights, and have to adapt to one. In this case, it's very flexible. So again, this is a sample of how it looks graphically, the evolution of the synthetic of the countries that ratified. Not in this case over all the years. This is collapsed by ratification year, 15 years before and 15 years after ratification, with the synthetic control group, which is basically built and dealt following the same logic of the treatment group. So questions, please. This is the time when you ask questions.
Thank you so much. First, I'll hand over to our discussion, Dr. Shannon Gravely, to see if there's anything she'd like to ask at this point. And listeners, please do put your questions in the Q&A box.
Jamie, okay, so thank you so much, Guillermo, for summarizing your paper that's in progress. There were, oh, should I start my video? Sorry. Start my video. Is it working?
Yes, we see you.
Okay, okay, there we go. So someone did ask in the chat about what is the FCTC. So just quickly, the World Health Organization Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, short form WHO FCTC, is the world's first global health treaty and has provided a legal dimension to international health cooperation and is widely recognized as a major milestone in global health. So right now there's over 180 parties to the WHO FCTC, and it provides a framework for tobacco control measures to be implemented at the national, regional, and international levels. However, the paper by Gravely et al. Was mentioned, and we wanted to assess not just ratification among the 182 parties, but also whether implementation was occurring with the guidance of the WHO FCTC guidelines. And we found that the articles, the implementation has been extremely slow. There are huge gaps, and many countries have not comprehensively implemented policies if they have considered them. So for example, only 41 countries have met the tax levels at the retail price of cigarettes. So this is not to say that the FCTC has failed, in fact, likely the opposite, but it shows that a lack of political will and infrastructure and also tobacco industry interference has slowed the progress in most countries that have ratified the treaty. So one key question to pose to the authors is, wherein lies the gap between the promise of the FCTC, so that is ratifying it, and its actual impact on smoking prevalence? So taking into account both reduced initiation and increased quitting, which this publication is aiming to assess. So the assumption in the current analysis is to test whether the FCTC itself has been impactful, but there's ample empirical evidence and conceptual analyses pointing to the problem of weak and slow implementation of the treaty, and when implemented has demonstrated its powerful impact on reducing smoking prevalence. So there's a logic model that I have discussed before with Jeffrey Fong when we were preparing to assess the FCTC in our Lancet Public Health publication. And the model breaks down the impact of the FCTC into two broad stages. So first, A, there's ratification, B, there's implementation, and C, there's assessment of the changes and outcomes, such as reduced prevalence. So it's important to note that there are inherent differences between these two causal variables, which is ratification and implementation. So some of my questions then to the authors is, these preliminary analyses fail to take into account the essential articles that provide compelling evidence that the FCTC has indeed led to significantly accelerated implementation. So that's A to B, and also that they that once implemented, smoking prevalence has decreased among countries that have implemented the measures. And this actually includes Argentina, who is not a country that has ratified, but has implemented many of the WHO FCT articles, including the MPOWER, which is smoke-free cessation, warnings, taxes, and taps bans. So the author should be clear and transparent first that the objectives and analyses are not testing the direct impact of policies, but whether they have actually ratified or not. And then I have two other questions that possibly could be fed in prior to presenting the results. And specifically, why did the authors exclude those who smoke between the ages of 25 and 44? Since 2005, this group of this cohort has high rates of smoking and fairly equivalent to the older age groups. And this is also an age where nicotine dependence has most likely set in. And then I understand that we're looking at reduced initiation among a younger cohort and then cessation among an older cohort. But to me, this implies that the age group of 25 to 44, that the FCTC should not does not necessarily apply to this group, which I think is a huge oversight. And then the synthetic control groups. I am not a methodologist, so I'm not going to say that I completely understand the reasons behind or the methodology used, but to me it seems like there's a huge lack of homogeneity. So with the exception of Argentina and the US, the other non-FCTC parties are radically different than the countries that have implemented FCTC in many cases. Some of them, including Indonesia, Dominican Republic, and Cuba, were 3 of the 4 countries that were involved with the litigation against Australia at the World Trade Organization plain packaging dispute settlement. So these are very much industry-oriented countries. And as I mentioned, some countries now that have ratified have literally done almost nothing with regard to power or even Article 9 and 10 with regard to product standards. So these include like Japan, several African countries, South American countries, and Eastern EU countries. So I guess, can the presenter explain these kind of 3 limitations and let us know if they are or not limitations, and how we can kind of gauge whether the FCTC is working based on ratification rather than implementation.
Thanks, Shannon. Over to you, Dr. Paraje.
Thank you very much. Okay, so please let me know if I forget any of the questions, or I kind of give an answer that it was not related to this question. So the first one is what we are measuring, basically. And it's true, we are measuring implementation. So basically there is ratification, not implementation. So it's the moment at which countries somehow commit to implement FCTC measures and power measures. We take it as the intervention year. That is the best possible result? Of course not, but given that we are trying to measure quantitatively using a method like ITSA, that's the way we have to do it, we believe. Now, what we could do, and in fact we did it in the paper we published this year, is to separate countries according to some measure of the effort they put to implement empower measures. So for instance, in the paper we recently published, we separated countries by those that increased taxes by 10 percentage point or more after ratification between 2008 and 2012, I believe, and those who that did not increase taxes. Again, that is a proxy of FCTC implementation or effort to implement empower measures. And what we found is that countries that increased taxes obtained far higher results in terms of decrease in smoking prevalence and higher quitting rates than countries that did not increase much taxes. We could do the same with the Empower score indices that other authors have developed, or following Shannon's and colleagues' paper. We could kind of group countries in as many groups as possible to measure, again, this intensity or this willingness to implement FCTC measures. It's a way of doing it. It's not simple to put as an independent variable this effort or this commitment or this intensity in measures, because we have countries basically that have ratified in different years, and we don't have that, of course, in the synthetic control group. So that is a problem. So I think that is one question. The other one is regarding the 25-44 age group. In this paper, we are measuring that group as well. I mean, so basically, we are looking at the 10-24 years group because we want to kind of capture the onset period, which for us is crucial in terms of one of the objectives of FCTC. And then we measure 25 and plus. We don't separate between 25 and 44, but we use 25 and plus. I don't see it as a big limitation, but again, please, I'm open to suggestions. And the other one, the heterogeneity in the synthetic control group, I believe that heterogeneity is good, especially to contract the synthetic control group. So we want heterogeneous countries for doing that. And remember that this heterogeneity is somehow considered in the weights that we obtain to form these synthetic control groups, the five or six synthetic control groups that we obtain. Again, that is not it's not considered. I think, at least myself, I don't consider it as a limitation. Again, I am open to discuss this. Now, I see a few countries that a few questions in the chat box that kind of point towards that the different degrees of implementation of measures. That is a limitation of the paper. And again, we won't be able, at least I don't see a way of addressing this limitation, at least with the framework that we are adopting to measure the effectiveness of the ratification. Yeah.
Thank you so much. In the interest of time, I know we all definitely want to hear your results, so I'm going to suggest we continue on with those. Thanks so much to your co-authors who are also answering questions live. And then at the end, there'll be an opportunity for more questions as well.
So I continue?
Yes, please.
All right. Thank you anyway for the questions and the comments. So basically, we constructed this synthetic control group in this way, and once we have the synthetic control groups and all the countries kind of realigned according to the ratification year, we just have to apply the equation to measure the different effects. Now, one somehow complexity is that in all cases, we observe that some non-linearity in the pre-ratification, the pre-treatment period. So basically what we observe is, for instance, that the number of smokers started to decrease globally and by income groups before ratification. So ratification occurred in most countries after the peak in the number of smokers occurred. So we have this non-linearity. Now, dealing with this non-linearity in an ITSA with a synthetic control group is possible, but it's somehow messy. It's not very clean to estimate this model. So what we did, and this is something I would love your opinion about, is we kind of subtracted the two series. So basically, we subtracted the control group and the synthetic control group, and we obtained a single series that is basically the difference between smokers, the difference in smokers between treated and control groups. So basically, we go from an ITSA with control group to an ITSA, a single group ITSA, being the difference between these two series, the thing we have to estimate. So basically, if the control group is good, we would observe that the difference is very close and it's not non-statistically different from zero in the pre-treatment period. And if there is some effect of the treatment of FCTC ratification, we would observe this difference to increase after the ratification year or after the treatment, which is what we observe in this case, basically. This is for the global population, 10 and 24 years old. We observe no difference, and we show the results. But graphically, we observe no difference pre-ratification, which means that the control group is good, and we observe that an increase in the number, in the difference between treated and control groups after ratification, which means that the decrease in the number of smokers is it grows after ratification when compared to the synthetic control group. So basically, this is the equation we estimate using a single group ITSA. We use this equation with or without the before, so the squared term after ratification, and we pick which one is the best model using the archaic criterion. So basically, we observe this, we estimate this model, the regular interrupted time series with a single series. So this is a result, the graphic results for the male population 10 and 24. This is the result for the female population 10 to 24, and these are the results, the kind of the coefficients of the models we obtain. What we see is that control groups the synthetic control groups are good for all cases except for high income countries. We cannot find a good synthetic control group, so the results for high income countries should not be considered as valid, I would say. But in all the in the rest of the cases, we find a good synthetic control groups. That's why B0 and B1 are non-significant. And we find difference not only in the immediate change after ratification, in some cases for the entire world and for males, but also in the trend. So basically, we find an average change in trend per year of, for instance, 2 million smokers after ratification at the global level for the 10-24 population. And the effect after 10 years is a reduction in young smokers of about 26 million smokers. Almost 16 million of them are males, and about 8 million are females. Reduction is also very strong for low and middle income countries. So these are the result. The reduction in smokers is equivalent to a reduction in 26.1 and 20% in the number of current smokers if the evolution would have been the one similar to the one shown by the synthetic control groups. And for the population 25 years and older, again, we are unable to find a good synthetic control group for females, so this result should not be considered. In the case of males, the best model has not a quadratic term post-intervention. That's why there is no coefficient there. And for the rest of the cases, the interpretation is similar to the one I gave before. In this case, we have a reduction after 10 years of ratification, overall reduction after 10 years of ratification of about 23 million smokers in this case. So again, this is what we found, a summary of what we found for this group of the population. So the questions I have, or we have, is first, again, how important do you think is the effect of using this model data? There is no other data that allows us at least to consider such a large number of countries. We are running the analysis for this small set of countries with a very high frequency of data, which somehow decreases the impact of the modeling of this data. So far, the results are similar to the ones we are obtaining. The other question I would say, if again, to me or to us is reasonable to subtract these two series and to deal this as a single group ITSA. But again, I would love to know your opinion on this. So the preliminary conclusions, and please remember this is ongoing work. What we find is that if the countries have not ratified, or FCTC have not been ratified, the current smoker prevalence would have been about 2 percentage points higher 10 years after ratification. It would be higher for males than for females, and would be higher for high-income countries than for low and middle-income countries. What we find again, is that at least ratification, again, we are not considering the intensity or the number of measures considered in this case, but the ratification, or at least the moment of ratification as a kind of sort of commitment to implement measures, was successful in decreasing the number of smokers. When compared to this synthetic control group, basically what we find is a reduction that is stronger than the one shown by the synthetic control group. So thank you very much again for the opportunity, and I guess I can take questions.
Thank you so much. I'll again first hand over to our discussant, Shannon, and please do keep the questions coming in the chat as well. If we don't get to them, they will be shared with the presenter after.
So I see quite a few questions, so I won't take up too much time, but thank you for a great presentation. My kind of two remaining questions, one would be methods, whether your team considered some sort of difference in difference method using countries as their own control and then comparing to countries that haven't ratified. And my second question would be, what would happen to the results if you added the ages 25 to 44 back into the model? I don't know if you've tested that or done sensitivity analyses. So those are my two remaining questions, and I'll hand it back over to Jamie since there's plenty of other questions. Thank you.
Can I answer that?
Please do.
So the 25-44 we haven't considered as a separated group, but of course we can do it. It's not a problem, I would say. The difference in difference, that is something again that we have to consider. So yeah, that is something that we have to definitely consider. We so far we have used the ITSA, but diff and diff, it's a possibility.
Thank you. So one of the Q&As that's come in is from Amos Hausner, who's asked, during the period of the study, new products emerged such as ENDS, in particular e-cigarettes. Does the study measure the use of those products? And if not, can we assume that the emergence of these products could have affected the results regarding cigarettes?
So we don't measure directly the appearance of ENDS. Again, that is in the trend both of the treatment group and the synthetic control group. It's not considered directly. I would say that I mean it should be somehow, if the effect of the appearance of these products is similar in countries that are part of the treatment group and than in the synthetic control group, then it should be somehow netted out, something like that. But I mean, it's something that we have to consider. But definitely we haven't not considered the emergence of this product as an independent variable.
Great, thank you so much. We have a question from Mike Pesco. Is this data that you use from the University of Washington considered the best panel data source of international smoking data? And what are the strengths and limitations compared to other potential sources?
Yeah. So, I mean, there are other sources. WHO has a series. I'm not sure if it is that complete in quotes than the GBD data. The limitations of the GBD data is, to me, again, is this modeling of the data, because not all countries conduct analysis or surveys regularly. So they have to, or they fill in the gaps in terms of years and age groups according to a model, which is a good model, but still is model data. And WHO does the same. So basically, I don't see any difference in using either one or the other one. So we went for the more complete one, I would say. But the limitations are exactly the same.
Thank you. And we have a few questions from Jeff Fong, but I'm going to ask the most recent one. So he said, thanks for answering his question about the difference. I understand how you would want the difference to be zero pre-treatment, but still the nonlinearity after the treatment is likely to be governed by the processes that happen before the treatment. So I think that the pre-treatment desire to equate the two groups may end up squeezing out and being expressed in the post-treatment difference.
Yeah, I'm not that sure about that. Again, the difference kind of, if there is no difference pre-treatment, it shouldn't be different in the post-treatment regarding the treatment. So if the treatment was not effective, somehow they shouldn't be different. I mean, the process would be exactly the same. If there is difference, it's not because of the pre-treatment process or data process, as Jeff mentioned. To me, again, that is, again, it's natural to kind of subtract these two series and deal with just one. The data processing is that data processes should be the same regarding treatment. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Okay, thank you. We have a question from Sophia Jung. Will the tobacco tax be required to be used for tobacco cessation, i.e. cessation medication, behavioral treatment, and tobacco prevention in these countries?
Will the tobacco tax be required to be used for tobacco cessation? I'm not sure if I understand the question.
I think, and Sophia, do jump in and correct me if I'm misinterpreting, but it's about the use of those revenues that are collected from the tobacco tax. So I think Sophia is wondering if you have any insight about how those revenues might be used.
No, I have no idea.
Okay.
No, we haven't considered that. Remember that basically we are analyzing 25 years of somehow data, model data, for 170 countries. So it's kind of hard to get information, that sort of information for every year, for every country. So we wouldn't be able to use that. Now, again, well, I guess I should think about it a bit more, but most or many of these trends are in the trends. I mean, this model is a time series model, so basically the time trend is somehow modeled in the ITSA. So basically, this should be, or at least some of these things should be captured by the trends, pre-intervention and post-intervention.
Great. Thank you. And a couple more questions / comments from Jeff. So he's following up on a previous point, saying if the propensity for implementing tobacco control measures is controlled for, then you have better isolation of the impact of FCTC ratification on outcomes.
I agree. But again, we don't have a way of getting that for each country. What we could do, again, is separate countries by the level of or the propensity of implementing empower measures, and run different analysis for each of this group, and kind of see in which group is stronger the effect. So maybe I'm sure we will find that in these countries, in the countries that were more effective or have a higher propensity of implementing empower measures, the reduction in smokers would be higher.
Thank you. And a final comment from Jeff. If anyone else does have comments or questions, please do put them in the Q&A. Jeff's commented, actually, both groups are nonlinear, so the simple difference may introduce some additional problems.
I don't think so. Again, because both groups are non-linear, and both groups behave similarly pre-intervention. The difference is linear and should be linear after intervention if the intervention is ineffective. It's basically, it shows a difference, we believe, only because the intervention is effective.
And Jeff says, good response, Guillermo. I do tend to think that despite the gravitational pull of employing a causal inference method, perhaps the synthetic control countries may just be too different.
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, again, that's a matter of, I mean, again, all I can say is that the synthetic control groups are good. Synthetic control groups, at least if we consider the statistical properties or the statistical behavior of the synthetic control group, is a good, or they are good synthetic control group. Now, if they are different or not, we kind of consider that when constructing the synthetic control groups. Again, in statistical terms, it's a good, they are good, except for the cases I mentioned, females in one of the cases, and high-income countries. And of course, I would love to have a chat with Jeff about this anytime.
Great, thank you. And Jeff, if you're around, we would definitely encourage you and anyone else on this call to come to Top of the Tops to have that conversation. Shannon, was there anything you wanted to add in our last few minutes together?
Yeah, I'm just going to add one last comment. And the treaty is very complex, and countries have different political motivations, and there's tobacco industry interference. So I just maybe the authors could comment on, we're saying that ratification works, and it's okay just to ratify without considering whether countries are actually moving forward with implementing very comprehensive policies. So what would you say if someone, if a country came to you and said, well, all we need to do is ratify, we don't actually need to do any further work, and we're going to recognize the benefits? How would you kind of contradict or counterbalance that particular argument?
I mean, ratification by itself doesn't do much. It's just a kind of a declaration of interest. Of course, after ratification, you have to implement the empower measures as much as you can and as intense as you can. Again, in terms of the analysis, how I would consider, or we would consider that, we tried to do that in our previous paper by separating countries that increased taxes by a lot or relatively by a lot versus countries that didn't do that. And we found that countries that increased taxes obtained better results in terms of reduction of prevalence and increase in quit ratio. We could do the same here with taxes or with the approach you used in the Lancet paper. But definitely I would say that it's not enough to just ratify. I mean, it's not. Sorry. And we are seeing that, with the protocol. Countries that are ratifying the protocol and not progressing in the implementation of the protocol, I mean, they don't see much changes in the illicit trade phenomenon. At least in the region I'm kind of working, which is Latin America. A few countries have ratified the protocol, but that's it. They didn't do much, so there is not big change. I would say that with the FCTC is the same.
Great. Thank you so much, Shannon, Guillermo, and everyone who's attended and asked questions. I'm going to hand over to Eliza to close us out.
Yes, we are out of time. However, if you still have burning questions or thoughts for Dr. Paraje, you can join us for our Top of the Tops, an interactive group discussion offered immediately following select TOPS events this season. To join, please copy the Zoom meeting room URL posted in the chat and switch rooms with us once this event concludes. We'll leave this webinar room open for an extra minute after the end to give everyone a chance to copy the URL, which is bit.ly/TOPS meeting, all lowercase. Thank you to our presenter, moderator, and discussant. Finally, thank you to the audience of 161 people for your participation. Have a top-notch weekend.